Okay. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Nice to have you here. So, we're going to be talking about primarily your new book today. Your new book is called It's What Makes Me me, a retired attorney's relationship with life and times. I can't tell you how many attorneys I've had on the show. I've done over 1,000 interviews, but I would say several. And many of them turn to writing, many of them turn to thriller writing, detective stories, and it all seems to be fodder from their career as an attorney. I see where you're a retired corporate bankruptcy attorney, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so was any of that fodder for your work or generally not?
So for the new book, not really. I also have a legal thriller and financial thriller series set in Kansas City, and certainly you're right what you know. Perhaps that's the reason that lawyers turn to thrillers. So that series, well, not really based on any cases that I had, certainly is based on a career, in the corporate bankruptcy world.
Okay, so this particular book is, when you say essays, what do you mean by essays?
Well, the book, I'm a big list maker, and so I walk around with my phone and Microsoft's OneNote, and I make lists of things. And it turned out that the list as it was growing was some were topics, thoughts, observations, feelings, and I decided to take the list and start writing chapters, essays about whatever that topic was on the list. And the next thing I knew, I had 300 pages of essays and had a real blast doing it. So it was a nice way to step away or step back from the legal thriller series and write about me instead of about the characters that I've created. And I really did enjoy it. I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed it. And the topics are very varied. The sections in the book are varied. There's a lot in it about aging because I'm getting older, and feel like I'm developing a little bit of expertise on what's involved in getting older and how I react to that. And then there's a lot about moving on from the practice of law, which oftentimes can be a smooth process, and other times it could be like stepping off the side of a cliff.
Did you have a tough time retiring?
I didn't, and that may be because I was always sort of the reluctant lawyer. I didn't always want to be a lawyer, and when I was either a junior or senior in college, my dad took me aside and had what I came to call the talk with me, which is what was I going to do with the rest of my life. And I had come up with a plan that he soundly rejected. My plan was to take a couple of years off and write the not so great American novel back in 1977, and that wasn't something he thought was sustainable. That would probably be a nice way of putting his reaction to that plan. So I always had in mind that I would write, but I needed something to put food on the table. So I went to law school, frankly, to figure out what I would do after the 3 years. And the next thing I knew, I'd been practicing bankruptcy law for 4 decades. So for me, retiring was the natural progression of really going back to what my idea was way back when in the 70s.
Well, you and I have sort of similar backgrounds in the sense that when I was a late teenager, I was a musician and I wanted to be a professional musician. And then my father passed away, and then I got the riot act from my mother to stop all this nonsense and get a real job, which I
Yeah.
did for 20
hmm
years, and then came back to the music and discovered that the internet had taken over the world. And
Yeah, I've heard your music. You're great. I also
oh,
play guitar, but not nearly as good as you.
thank
And
you.
I can't imagine what my dad would have said if I told him I wanted to graduate from college and join up with the Eagles or something like that and tour the world. So
Well,
not that they would have ever had
I
a need for
presented
me.
that idea to them right out of high school. So
No.
I didn't
hmm
even want to go to college at first, and then they were horrified. I think parents are better about it now than they were in our generation. I'm going to put us in around the same age. Because I've had kids on the show who were 16, 17 years old that the father is the roadie and the mother's the manager. And I thought, wow, I could have just imagined my father if I had said, hey, Dad, can you help me lift that amp and bring it in? I know what his answer would have been.
Maybe that was the deficiency in the plan I presented. Maybe I should have told my dad that not only am I going to write a book, but you're going to be my literary agent.
There
Maybe
you
that would
go.
have
Maybe that would
changed
have
the reaction.
that would have done it. But you did come back to it.
I did. And, when you're a lawyer, one of the things you do a ton of is write. And so I did have 4 decades of writing every day. And so the process of writing, the discipline of having a routine, the practice of law taught me very well. So I didn't have to learn how to write. I had to learn how to write things that weren't about a pending case or about the law. So even in the legal thriller series, you have to really balance the overkill of describing what the law is that the star lawyer is dealing with, for fear of losing, an audience. But I credit the practice of law for making the path a little easier to transition into writing. Although, I never wrote fiction in the practice of law. At least I didn't intend to write fiction. I'm sure there was a judge or two that read something I wrote and didn't believe it. But I had never really sat down to write fiction, so that was a big deal. But the process of writing, 1,000, 1,200 words is something as a lawyer you do at least once a day, if not multiple times a day. So that part, went well.
Did you get any assistance doing your fiction writing?
I've been learning as I've gone along. And so the 4th book, Cram Down, which I think is my best book, best story, best storyline. It's like anything else. If you get better at it, you learn some things. But I haven't gotten assistance from anyone, and I enjoy the not having assistance from anyone. It's a very solitary process. I'm kind of a loner by trade, I suppose. And the idea of going to my computer in the morning and sitting down for at least 2 hours, 6 days a week, which is what my routine is, it is fine. I don't want anybody else, invading or participating in what I'm going through.
Okay, so you approach it like a job rather than just when the mood strikes you.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I have writer friends that are, the mood strikes you kind of writers. So they might wake up at 3 a.m. with a need to sit down and write. I don't do that, and I don't write at 3 a.m. That would be terrible for me, but it works for them. For me, I need the routine, and probably I need it because that's what I had as, for 40 years as a lawyer. You get up, you go to work. Your calendar is chock full of things that have to be done, and you do them. And I find comfort in that part of the process of treating it as if it is my job.
See, some people like to break away from the routine once they've been at it for a long, long time. And they retire and, they throw the alarm clocks out the window and just get up whenever they feel like it. But some people, I think, need that sort of structure.
Yeah, I need the structure. I like to chuckle with friends that I didn't actually retire. I'm just doing other things. I'm not going to court anymore every day. But my days are quite full. I have a lot of board service that I do, and between the organizations that I work for that are not in the law business, and the writing, and then the music. I now can play as much as I want, whenever I want. I have a pretty full day every day, and I love that.
So would it be fair to say that this book, you said it's a collection of essays, does it read rather like a journal?
So a couple of reviewers described it as sort of getting into my head and seeing how I've journalized, my life. And there is a certain aspect to that for sure. It may be that it's like a public diary or a public journal that I've done. And others have described it as sitting around a campfire with friends and exchanging stories. And I kind of like the campfire analogy.
I want to go back to, we've got just about 3.5 minutes. I want to go back to the aging thing. I saw something on here that I kind of just shook my head. Congratulations, it debuted as #1 new release on Amazon in the aging and adulthood genre. I didn't know there was such a genre, and I have mixed feelings about that specific genre because I kind of think it's irrelevant to the material.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, my take on aging is that I don't mind people who don't feel their age, but I don't like people who don't act their age, if you know what I mean.
I do. I think I do. Yeah. As to the feeling my age, that depends on what day I woke up. I wake up.
I hear that.
Parts of me that have been replaced now. I write about that in the book, and so there's a bit of bionic science going on inside of me. Although I can't run as fast as Colonel Majors did in the $6 Million Man. As far as acting my age, I'm not sure that I fully know what that is. I'm a grown up. I'm about to turn 69 in a couple weeks. And I don't know what a 69-year-old is supposed to act like.
I'll tell you,
act like me.
I tell you what, a 69-year-old is not supposed to act like a 20-year-old frat boy. And,
that's true.
And unfortunately, I know a couple that are like that are still going out every Friday and Saturday night and getting drunk and coming home and throwing up in the garden, and it's just enough already. That's what I mean.
I don't think I did that when I was a 20-year-old eligible to be a frat boy. So I don't do that for sure. But I don't feel like most days I don't feel like I'm 69. And when I say that, I think back to when I was in my 30s, and the idea that I was going to turn 40 was fiction. It was foreign. It was off in the future. And now I'm 29 years older than that. So I don't feel like I'm 69, but I never gave much thought growing up, especially once I started practicing law, what I would feel like when I was in my late 60s.
I guess to sum up that whole theory is that age is supposed to acquire wisdom. And people who have gotten to 60, 70, 80, who have acquired no wisdom are the ones that I take issue with, because either they went through their entire life blind, or they're just too shut off to realize what they missed.
Well, I don't know how wise I am. I just know I make these lists, and so far, the world of the readers seems to have enjoyed the things that I've been thinking about. My approach to getting older. I chuckle in the book and say I'm getting older, but next year I'll be old because I'll turn 70. And what does that mean? I just don't know that I'm the kind of person that's going to say, okay, now that I've gone through 69 years on planet Earth, that I'm very wise and people ought to listen to me.
Well, you sound wise. I think that, and there's probably a lot of wisdom in your book, because the way it sounds written is all observational sort of writing, correct? Things that you have observed over your,
self-deprecation.
That's
just how I am.
The mark of a wise person.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have a chapter on how to bring peace to the world. I'm not that wise.
Well, nobody is. I mean, certainly nobody we've elected to be our leaders have had any clue on how to do that. We've got just about a minute left, and I did want to touch on this so we can go over a little bit. Why self-publish? This is a huge topic which we could spend hours on, but I assume, since it's on here, that you are self-published?
I am in the present world. When I practiced law, I co-wrote two law books, two bankruptcy books. And I had a traditional publisher for each. One was Aspen and one was John Wiley. And because that's what the world was back in the 90s when I published those books. And I honestly had no idea how lucky, spoiled I was. All I had to do was write. the publishing companies then took the book, edited it, formatted it, marketed it to the world, and then sent me a check every quarter. And then you fast forward to 2019 and 20 when I finished the first book in the post-law world, and just like that. And there's many fewer publishing companies, and Amazon has just made it incredibly easy to publish. The publishing companies that are out there that would probably be interested in a book like mine then wouldn't really market it. So I'd be out there marketing it myself anyway. So I just decided to go the self-publishing route and try it to start. And it turns out I like it. It pushes my envelope in that it makes me get out and do things like your show and talk about the book and me. And I've reached a comfort zone about doing that. So I think self-publishing is here to stay for me.
Well, it certainly gained a lot more respectability than it had in the 90s.
Sure.
Because in the 90s, people kind of, not everybody, but the publishing houses or, the general public, oh, it's self-published, it must not be any good, is what I would hear.
Right.
Okay, I don't hear that much anymore.
No, I mean, you don't. I don't either. I have an editor who I like. I have a book designer who I really like. And so the product comes out indistinguishable from something that Random House would put out in the store. The challenge is the 3 million books that self-publishing has now kind of allowed to occur, and I'm part of that explosion for sure. It's just hard to distinguish yourself, and there's a lot of really good books that go unread because there's so many books to sort through to decide what you want to read. I think there's fewer readers today than maybe back in the 90s as well.
That's
and
possible.
And the whole world of how do you market a book for most indie authors is something they don't have a clue about. Certainly I didn't have a clue about. So there's a real learning curve, and but an enjoyable learning curve.
Well, Mark, I think on that we're going to have to wind this down. Again, the book is called It's What Makes Me Me, a retired attorney's relationship with life and times. The author is Mark Shaiken. Last question, do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure, it's markshakenauthor.com.
Okay. We will put that up on the screen. Thank you very much for coming on this show. It was a nice conversation. Best of luck with the book. Hope it does well.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Had fun.